Hello, it is I, here with a video, maybe, if this makes it that far. We're gonna make some silicone things. Spooky fall time stuff. So, yeah, stay tuned.
Yeah.
Full disclaimer, this is a very in-depth tutorial, so if you're looking for something that's straight to the point, this may not be your video. So first of all, you're going to want your alginate. It's in this neat little sack here. Oh, and here's some silicone. Silicone is very necessary for this process. Yeah, silicone pigments. You don't necessarily need silicone pigments if you don't want to paint or anything like that. You can just make a silicone hand similar to this one here. It is not painted at all, and it's still fun to do, and you have a great time with it. But in this tutorial, I paint, and I will show you how I do that as well. You'll also need some red solo cups or plastic cups, disposable cups, anything like that. Some sticks to mix with, gloves if you don't want to get too dirty. I have a palette here, it helps me, and some brushes and some stir sticks, stuff like that. Nothing too expensive. Scissors, yeah. Alright, we're going to go ahead and get started with our silicone. The brand that I use is Smooth On. I recommend them absolutely 100%. And the ones that I'm using here is the Dragon Skin 10 Very Fast Platinum Silicone, skin safe and everything. And I have the very fast because I'm impatient. There's always a part A and a part B when you're mixing stuff like this, and I can explain that a little bit more later. So you're going to want some sort of disposable cups. I used to have these, but I've used them all and I don't want to contaminate my current silicone, so I'm going to go ahead and use some red solo cups to get this started, and I'll just cut them to size. So first things first, I do recommend that you put down some paper towels or a towel that you don't mind getting some rubber on, or just something so that you don't get anything on this surface that you're working with. All right, so starting with the cups, we're going to cut them quite low because when we're mixing the two parts of silicone, we don't need a whole lot, so I don't need this huge cup. So you can see me doing that here. We're basically going to do this twice so that we can have part A and part B. And of course, you don't need to use red solo cups. The only reason why I am is because I ran out of my originals that I normally get on Amazon for very cheap. But this is for people that don't have everything together like me. So I went ahead and cut the second cup, and I actually got a pretty good tear in there, so here I am taping that up. Duct tape works fine. Electrical tape is probably going to work best, honestly. If you just tape it up so that you can seal that so no silicone gets through, that'll be fine. And now you got your part A and part B cup. I also went ahead and put on some gloves because the feeling of uncured silicone on your fingers is very easy to it's very uneasy to remove, and it just icky. Don't like it. So now you're going to want to take your tongue depressor stick, popsicle stick thing, and we're going to use that to mix part A for now. It says that you want to stir this really well before you use, but we're going to stir it pretty well when it's in the red solo cup anyway, so I'm not too stressed about that. But we're going to want to get equal parts of part A and part B, because if they're even just a little bit off, the silicone will not cure as perfectly. So here I am pouring the part A, and you'll see the amount that I use here. It looks like it's a lot, but it's really not. And I'll show you guys just in a second how much I actually got in that cup. I never really measure by volume or anything like that. You're technically supposed to, but I just kind of do everything by eyes, and it works for me. Doesn't mean it'll work for you, so if you guys want to get a scale, that works perfectly as well. So this is the amount that I have in my cup, and we're gonna try to match that perfectly with part B. And definitely get a different stick to mix with part B, because as soon as you use the same stick or anything, you're going to contaminate the heck out of part B. So I'm going to put part A aside. We're going to start pouring that part B and try to match it as best we can with the volume of part A. That seems about right. Scrape off the excess. Alright, and then we're gonna see what we got and see if it matches up. And you could add or take away. That's the beauty of it. Once this stuff is out, you can basically be out for hours. It's not gonna do anything. The only time that anything starts happening with the silicone is when they are cross-contaminated or mixed, because that activation process will accelerate it and it'll turn into rubber. Alright, so now we're going to color our part A silicone, and you always do part A. I'm not exactly sure why, but part A always takes the color a little bit better, I think, and it will mix very well with part B. So I got a few different colors here. I don't have the best colors, but I definitely want the finger to look dead and just rotting. So I'm gonna put a little bit of this nail bed color in there, and I have a star stick that I still need to clean off here, so I'm gonna do that. So I'm actually using silicone paints for this when I'm supposed to be using silicone pigments, but I'm broke and do not have pigments with me currently. So I'm actually going to be using a whole lot. Normally, if you're using pigments, you use a teeny tiny bit and it does just enough that you need, but here I am wasting paint and doing it the hard way, so definitely get you some pigments and not paint. But once you get it in there, you can start mixing and mixing and mixing, and just basically mix until you see that it's all one consistent color. And always keep in mind that you are mixing this part A with part B, so it's always going to be a little bit less opaque when you mix the two. So generally you make part A and the pigments that you're currently creating a little bit more opaque. Alright, so that's a decent color here. I think I'm happy with that. So I'm gonna put a little bit of this vein blue color in there, about the same amount that I put the original first color that I did, and I'm hoping that this will give me a very dead look. It's doing basically exactly what I want it to, mixing in very well. So I'm gonna go ahead and get some of this natural lips color in there. Sorry about that blur there, but I add a little bit less than the other two colors that I put in. I kind of add it onto this stick because it makes mixing a lot easier, and you can kind of see this change here. Beautiful. It's really looking dead, and that's making me happy. Alright, so that's our overall color, and I'm pretty satisfied with it. Ugh, sorry about that blur. My camera sometimes just can't. Alright, so now that we prepped our silicone, it's time to go ahead and work with our alginate. And if you are absolutely confused with what the heck alginate is, if you've ever been to the dentist and had to give them a cast of your teeth, basically like you put your mouth in that strawberry flavored goo, that's what alginate is, and we're going to basically be doing the same thing, just instead of with teeth, we're doing it with fingers. And make sure you make the height of your cup the same height as your fingers. And you can see that I got a pretty good tear in there, so I'm going to tape that up. So I just finished taping the outside, and I'm going to go ahead and tape the inside just to really make sure nothing seeps out. Heck yeah. Alright, so now we have prepped everything that we need to start with our alginate. We got our silicone here. We're not going to touch this until the alginate is done curing, but let's go ahead. So here's a big sack of alginate. Got it for a good price. We're going to mix the alginate actually in a red Solo cup. We're going to need 2 red Solo cups for this. Oh, and definitely do not mix the alginate near the silicone because you don't want any of those bits getting in there. So you're going to actually see me perform a mistake here at the beginning. I didn't mix the alginate correctly with the water. The water may have been a little bit too hot, so it went a little bit too quickly. So it hardened before I could put my fingers in, but that's pretty informal. It's pretty common that this will happen as your first try, but looks like I have plenty of powder, so thankfully I'm okay. But definitely keep in mind that this could go wrong. And you're going to want to mix equal parts of the powder and warm water. Not too warm because it'll go a little bit quicker than you're wanting. But yes, that means that the warmer the water, the quicker the alginate will cure and the less pot life you will have. Pot life is basically just stir time, so this is the amount of time that you are able to stir it before it starts to harden. Alright, with your 2 cups ready, one of them half full of alginate, you're going to want to fill the second cup with the same amount of warm water. Ooh. Ooh. Alright, so this is where you witness my mistake. First of all, it was very difficult to film this, and I think that's why I messed up in the first place, because I was trying to get a good view of the camera and less focused on getting the chunks out of the cup and whatnot. So I laid down a paper towel, of course, to make sure no powder and icky stuff gets everywhere. You're going to slowly pour the water into the powder, and then you're going to mix it at the same time. And it was really hard to do this with only 2 hands, but you'll see. So the mixing process, usually people actually use a drill with a mechanical mixer attached to it. That way it gets rid of all the chunks and it just mixes very fast and very easy. It's really difficult to do it by hand sometimes, but if I can do it, you can do it. And basically what you want is enough water to where it makes a very milky consistency. Not too watery, but enough to where you don't really visibly see any chunks. And make sure that you dig at the bottom of the cup, you get all the powder up. And if you're paranoid about sniffing any of that powder, just go into a well-ventilated area or just outside. Everybody can use more sunlight, right? Regardless of the video and everything, I hope you guys are having a nice COVID October, COVID fall. And hopefully this is something cool that you'll be able to do at home. So right now I'm kind of noticing that it's getting a little bit stiffer and I'm having a harder time mixing it, and eventually I'm not going to be able to use it, but it's okay. You keep trying till you get it. Alright, so here you can notice I'm having a hard struggle. It's definitely not supposed to be this thick or slow when coming out, and in this moment I knew that I messed up. So essentially I waited way too long, and that's not how it's supposed to look. It's just not. That's a hard no for me. Take off my glove and I try to put my fingers in and just watch how awful this is. It just won't even go in. We just do it again, but this time we do it right. Alright, so I mixed it again, and this is how it's supposed to look, with that runniness, kind of like a spoiled milk type of vibe. Yeah, that's what it's supposed to be, and it's supposed to just kind of go right in there. Looks like this sat a little bit longer than maybe it should have, but it's still gonna work fine. As long as you get it in there and there's minimal chunks and no powder at all, and you can put your fingers in, that's all that matters. So this is how it's supposed to look. Put them in there, take them out, swivel them around. The reason why you do this is because you want to cover everything that you possibly can, so it picks up all your fingerprints, all your crevices, all that goodness. And then you're gonna sit in here for about 8 minutes. It cures in 8 minutes. It might be kind of annoying at the beginning because you're not gonna really tell where your fingers are going. Just as long as you're not touching the bottom or the sides, you're gonna be good. Alright, so 8 minutes later you can totally tell that it's done because it's just hard and you can feel the suction on your fingers, and you can just pull it out like that. Maybe a little bit of wiggling will do it, but it's not hard at all, and you're gonna have a beautiful mold of your fingers. My camera done oofed and I didn't actually get this part, but I basically just poured part B into part A of the silicone, and I am mixing the heck out of it now, getting it ready to pour. And keep in mind that the pot life of this stuff is, I believe, only like 8 or so minutes. No matter what it is, you should still mix it pretty fast. And as soon as I know that it's all consistently mixed in, I'm going to pour it in to the mold here. And you want to pour from a very high up distance because it makes the stream much thinner, and it really gets in there. That beginning was kind of rough, but the thinner it pours, it also eliminates air bubbles as much as possible. A good tip as well is when you finish actually filling it with all the silicone that you want in there, if you tap the cup on the table, it'll help get air bubbles out of there. And I'm gonna put a bone in one of these just so you guys can kind of see what that ends up looking like. Alright, so we got our bone and we're just gonna legit put it right in. It's kind of like a guessing game. You don't really know how to set it. If it feels right, it feels right. I'm gonna string some upwards so that it kind of clings onto the bone and looks all gnarly, and as it sets over time, it's gonna get more and more and more tacky, and you can kind of play with it and make it look real grody and pulling apart. This is kind of how grody I made it. I pulled with the tackiness and it kind of looks dope. So I'm gonna let it sit for 30 minutes. Also, just be sure that whatever silicone you do use, read the instructions and see what the cure time is, because you may not have the same kind as me. Okay, it's been 30 minutes and it just kind of pops out. It's very easy, very simple, and that's all you gotta do. They came out pretty dang good. Very minimal bubbles. There is some a little bit on the knuckle there, but I've definitely had worse, and the number one thing to avoid bubbles is the alginate, and you know, that was a stressful process and it kind of always is, but as you keep going it gets a little bit easier. So I'm going in now and just taking off all the excess surrounding pieces. just like the overfill basically is what it is. And a lot of it you can pull off with your fingers, but the thicker parts I just use some scissors to cut off. And you can also kind of just do your own thing with this because it's a flexible thing. You can cut different shapes and stuff to make it as weird looking as you want. Also, I cut it to how I want, and it's fun to bend it and all that. Heck yeah. Here you can just kind of see the paint difference. The one that is unpainted is a little bit darker toned, but I'm gonna basically make it look very similar. So if you want to know how disappointing my camera is sometimes, how about I tell you that we were recording and then it just decided to not and corrupt all the data that I had from the progress that I made on the painting of the finger. But I'll show you what I got done so far. I just kind of added some blackness in the like the crevices, like the knuckle parts, and then just some redness in the nail to make it look very just oozy and nasty. I made this dark green gray color with this guy, the darkest brown, and then I made this red color with the natural blush. And then for the third color, I actually used some of my own fake blood from Mold Life, and this is not recommended because the color pigments are actually part B of the silicone that you mix in equal parts with to do this paint. So it's not recommended that you mix anything else in, but I managed to get away with it. Alright, so now that I can actually film this part and make sure it doesn't corrupt, I'm gonna go in with the vein blue. And I actually found that I really enjoy this part, just adding the veins on the sides of the fingers where they normally would be if like your finger was infected and nasty. So you can see that I actually go in and I grab an equal part of the part B that I'm going to mix in with the part A, and you don't actually see me doing this because it was very difficult to figure out how to film this. The part A is actually in that small bottle on the bottom left there, so you have to mix that in with the color because color is part B, and that's how you activate these paints to eventually cure. And this was my very first time ever painting with silicone, and I should disclose that I am nowhere near a professional because of that. So here I'm going to add the veins on the sides of the fingers. I think it's going to look pretty badass, so we're going to go ahead and start with that. I also know that you can use naphtha, which is like a lighter fluid basically, to thin the paints and to make them more fluent when you're putting them on, but I do not have any with me, so I just kind of work with what I can. So here I am dabbing the blue in basically a straight line. I just try to make it look veiny and gross, and if there's ever any that looks pretty good, man. If it's ever too much, I just tap it with my finger to kind of lift some of that color up. And I will say that because I've painted about 3 fingers now, this one is my least favorite of the ones that I've done. I think that for the sake of the video, I wasn't as concentrated and stuff and just more focused on showing the camera what I'm doing. But this is the general way that I've been painting. You'll also notice that the way that the silicone cures is very like shiny and glossy, and that's just because I have not mattified it at all. But if you really wanted to have a matte finish to any part of the finger, you just need to apply a clear coat of the part A and then the clear bits and coat it very lightly and then powder it very, very, very lightly with a mattifying powder, of course. And I think that really any mattifying powder could work, even if it's like a translucent powder for your makeup. But I personally do not mattify this because I like the glossy, gross, wet look. But yeah, the veins are looking pretty cool. Alright, so this is my finished product. It's definitely not perfect. I personally would want to work on this a little bit more, and I know that I will eventually, but overall I think it's a pretty fine paint job. And I did get some paper towel and fibers and hairs and stuff stuck on there while it was curing because I have cats, and anyway, I suggest that you put it at a high area, away from any fibers, anything like that, otherwise you're gonna get some stuff stuck. But here is the other finger. You could also see that there's some fibers and little bits stuck on there too, so just be careful with that because silicone is gonna be a little bit tacky for a while. But here's that comparison, so you can definitely see that the one that I worked on today was a little bit darker. But yeah, And this guy is definitely my favorite piece. I worked on this one for an hour or so, I believe. And I am super impressed with myself. I don't know, I just love this one. And I'm sorry that I didn't do a tutorial on how to do this bone one, but it's basically the exact same thing. I just added a little bit of that fake blood on the actual bone piece and more blood in general in some of the areas. Yeah, I hope you guys have fun with this. So that concludes the end of the tutorial. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope it explained enough in detail. It's a process to learn all this stuff, but I hope that you have fun on your SFX journey and you can make some cool stuff before Halloween. If you guys have any questions, please comment. I will respond. I always do. And you can reach out to me on all my social medias and stuff. I will always look at my messages and stuff like that. So thank you guys so much for watching. Have a good spooky October. Also, a very special side note today is the song that I'm using in the background and what it comes from. Let's get a good listen on this right now.
Praise the Lord.
Yeah, that mess is from a game called Dark Cloud, and all the music is composed by Tomohiro Nishiura. I think I may have did that right. Anyways, game needs more love. You could be the perfect lover. We need a remaster, baby. We need this. We need a third game. We need Towin back. We need Chug back. Chug for president 2020. God, he's better than the current options that we have. Oh man, please. If anything, just listen to the soundtrack. You can find that heckin' stuff on YouTube. Support. Such a good thing. Goodness me. Anyways, goodbye. What are you doing?
Look at my beautiful artist girlfriend. Look at her cute little ponytail. Look how talented she is.
Stop! I look bad. I look hideous.
You look adorable.